All right. So today is the day after Labor Day, right? So we are at Tuesday, September 6th. We're going to have a pretty short lecture on Chapter 4, kind of on the second part of Chapter 4. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is kind of get with your teams then and do some planning in terms of how you're going to divide and conquer the work, okay? And I'll talk a little bit about that so that you have maybe kind of a basis of where you want to go. And then you have quite a few assignments that are due tonight, right? That because we moved the day out because of the Labor Day holiday. So I hope you all had a great holiday. And some of you have got those done already, but there's quite a few of you that still have some of those to finish up. So you want to be working on that as well. So let's do the lecture first, and then let's talk about the project. Okay. So this actually is pretty much going to be over the appendices for Chapter 4. So when you map your process, you're going to map it the first time through at a relatively high level, okay? And what you're going to find is that sometimes there might be a part of that process that you're going to need to dive into deeper, okay? For example, we might say if we start to map a production line, we might say that a particular workstation, and we might have a box for that workstation, and we might say that it takes, 45 seconds at that workstation, okay? But if later on we decide that that might be an area where there's some opportunity, we would do what's called a subprocess, okay? Sometimes spelled S-U-B-P-R. I see that it's spelled wrong on the slide.
Subprocess.
So what you do then is you just take the deeper dive on that particular activity, and then you map out the deeper dive, right? So I could say, well, the operator picks up the wrench, that takes 5 seconds. They slide the product, that takes 2 seconds, and so I just go take a deeper dive on it. It's basically what we mean by using a sub-process. Or we explode that activity down into its sub-activities. So when you're starting out your mapping process, you're not necessarily trying to get down to the smallest, finest grain of detail. You're trying to get an overview, and then with that overview, you're going to try to decide, okay, where do we see the opportunity, and where do we want to go for the right level of detail, okay? And so the right level of detail is, what level do you need to do the analysis? So, and so sometimes it's advantageous to show several levels at once. If we looked at figure 4.3 in the textbook, and I'm just going to flash that up. If you're doing this here at home, you can find it in the textbook. She says as though she can find it. Right? So on the in the appendix, on page 98, right, they show here's the original mapping, and then they've just picked one, and they've gone into deeper detail. So that's what we mean by doing a sub-process or cascading. Okay, so it's not anything... It's not anything really complicated. It's just a tool that we use. Okay? All right. This Appendix 4.2 is kind of a review of the critical path method. And based on some of the homework that was submitted, I feel like we kind of do need to do a walk back through that again. So let's take a minute here because this will be part of your exam. It won't necessarily be part of the homework that you've got associated with this chapter because you did that with the alternate text. Let's just take a walk back through now that you've had a chance to do some, get some feedback on them. Because Appendix 4.2 and that alternate Chapter 5 kind of tied together. So in that critical path method, we're saying all activities that lie on the critical path are labeled critical activities. Okay? And we know that a delay in executing any one of those, right, delays the completion of the whole process. Slack time of an activity is the extent to which that activity can be delayed without affecting the process flow time. So if an activity has slack time, by definition, it's not on the critical path. Okay? All right, so we worked on the earliest start time, earliest finish time, latest finish time, and latest start time. Okay, and we can calculate slack time by latest start time minus earliest start time, or latest finish time minus earliest finish time. So we systematically calculate by doing the forward scheduling and then we get our earliest start time, earliest finish time, and our backward scheduling to get latest start time and latest finish time. Okay? So given that this is our diagram, okay, if I would just draw on here, RT diagram. One of the mistakes I saw someone make is that they started on day 1, and you start on day 0, okay? And we're going to say this is in hours. So if task 1 takes 20 hours to complete, right, then my earliest start time is 0, right, and my earliest finish time is day 20, okay? So what is it, Taylor, for task 3? What's my earliest start time?
20.
Right, and so then my latest start time is
45.
45, right? Rachel, for task 5, what's my earliest start time?
45 and 65.
And 65, right? Okay, and I can't do this one because I have 2 arrows coming into it, so I come back down here. Courtney, what am I doing for task 2?
Your start time would be 20.
20.
And then it would be 55.
And 55, right? Okay. Zach, task 4.
Start time is 55 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Finish at 65.
Mm-hmm. Spencer?
Start time is 65 hours, and then it's 95.
Okay. All right. Andrew, you get the only kind of tricky piece here. Aren't you happy you
Yeah.
got that lucky? So 2 arrows coming in. So do I take on the forwards pass, am I taking the earliest or the latest of those 2?
The earliest.
Okay. Everybody agree?
No.
It's the latest. Okay.
Kidding.
Yeah. You're just checking to see if I knew, right? So the deal is, think of it this way. The reason it's that way is because you cannot start task 7 until both task 5 and task 6 are done. Okay? And so you're going to take the latest, so that would make this what?
95.
95. Finishing at when?
110.
110. Okay. And Emily, earliest start time?
110.
110. Earliest finish time?
150.
There you go. Okay, Scotty, so I'm heading backwards now. Where do I start here?
150
150.
and 110.
And what?
110.
110. Hunter?
110 and 95.
110 and 95. Okay. Kaylin. I'm headed backwards. Am I taking the latest or the earliest from here?
Earliest.
Yeah. And there's there's only 1 arrow, I guess, coming back, isn't there? So this becomes
95
mhm.
and 65.
Okay. Taylor, we're back to you.
65.
Mhm.
55.
Mhm. Rachel.
55 and 20.
Okay, 55 and 20. Okay, and then Courtney, back up here. So what am I putting here?
95.
95. And what?
75.
75 is correct. Okay, Zach?
75 and 50.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Spencer, you're the lucky one. On the backwards pass, when I've got 2 arrows coming back into this, am I taking the latest time or the earliest time?
It'd be 20.
It'd be 20.
Yep.
So the earliest time,
Right.
right? Okay, so based on that, I know that my critical path is here because there is no slack time on this path. Okay? Andrew, if I wanted to calculate slack time for task 3, what am I going to do?
Task 3, you're going to take the latest start time minus the earliest start time.
The latest start time?
I mean,
Either one is fine. So I can go 50
Yeah.
minus 20, and it's going to be 30. Or I can go 75 minus
Right.
45 is 30. So that's what my slack time is there. Emily, what's my slack time on task 5?
35 or 30.
30, right? Same thing. 95 minus 65 is 30, or 75 minus 45 is 30. If at any time you calculate that slack time and you do the comparison of the latest finish time minus the earliest finish time and the earliest and the latest start time minus the earliest start time, and they're not the same, you've done something wrong in your diagram. And it's a sign that you need to go back and take a look. Okay? All right. And so again, I just kind of decided it would not hurt after reviewing some of the homework if we walked back through that. It seems like you've got a pretty good handle on it. Okay? But then we would transfer that into a table, right, and calculate that slack time. That's the way we make it look pretty. Right? We get all of those tasks, the flow time, earliest start time, earliest finish time, latest start time, latest finish time. Okay? All right. Another thing that we talk about in the appendices is when we start to talk about rework. Okay? And again, basically you're at a Tupperware factory and they're just checking out how loud the burp is, right? If the burp's not loud enough, apparently they're saying that has to go back through rework. Okay? So rework is when defects are found and they need to run through an activity or a set of activities again to be fixed. Okay? So when we start to talk about flow time, the only thing we've talked about so far is a one-time through, right? But now if we're looking at our process and things have to go through certain steps more than once because they're not done right, we would consider that rework. And basically what you do is you end up taking that percentage that goes through the rework. Okay? So again, we've got quality control. Visits are, as an example, not every unit is quality inspected. So rework says, the difference between rework and visits, rework says it has to go back through the step because it didn't get completed accurately. Visits say not everything goes through that step because it doesn't need to happen. Like you may only inspect every 10% of your units, right? And so you're only going to have 10% of those units are going to go through that step. Okay? So when we're working with rework and visits, then visits are the amount of time a process is repeated before the unit is completed. Example, if 10% of the units require rework, we would say the number of visits to this activity is 1.1 because every unit goes through plus an extra 10%. Everybody seeing how we would use that? Okay. In other situations, some units skip an operation, and that is, so then your number of visits is less than 1. So example, if only 10% of the units are inspected, the number of visits through that inspection activity is 0.1. Okay. That being said, the total flow time of an activity then has to be revised based on whether or not you've got rework or visits. So as an example, assume that you have malfunctioning equipment in the subassembly department has caused some quality problems. Until the equipment is fixed, 50% of the units need to go through the operation a second time. Therefore, flow time of initial activity was 30 minutes. Now its flow time is multiplied by the number of visits. So 30 minutes times 1.5, or basically in this case we're talking about rework, the number of rework, 30 minutes times 1.5 is 45 minutes. So we revise that flow time that was originally said to be 30 minutes for that activity. Now we up it to 45 because we have units that have to repeat through that process twice. Okay? All right. So if we were going to look at problem 4.4 on page 97, okay, 4.4 on 97 says, a home insurance application consists of two forms which relate to the homeowner. F1 relates to the homeowner and F2 which relates to the property. On receipt, each application is processed, recorded, and separated into F1 and F2. This operation requires 10 minutes. F1 requires activity A for 15 minutes per unit and then activity B for 10 minutes per unit. Okay? F1 and F2 are then combined and further processed by a loan officer for 15 minutes. All the times mentioned represent flow times of the various activities and include the effects of waiting. Draw a process flow chart. Okay? So our process flow chart, we've got it where we start the process, right? We process and separate. It takes 10 minutes. Okay. And we say, I'm sorry, I'm beeping kind of loud here. All right, let's go that route. So when we first draw the diagram, it says that activity A takes 15 minutes per unit, right? But then it says what we're going to do is we're going to escape. So we start out that processing and separating takes 10 minutes. F1 requires activity A for 15 minutes. And then activity B for 10 minutes, right? And then F2 requires activity C for 20 minutes. And they're combined, and then it takes 15 minutes for the loan officer. Okay, so we've drawn our process flow chart. So what's the flow time of this activity? Where were we going around the room? Were we back to Andrew?
Sure.
So what's the flow time? So we have two paths, right?
Right.
So to get the flow time, we have to find which one is the critical path or which one is the longest. So if I looked at this, I would say these activities are the same at the beginning and the end. If I add these up, it's 25, and that's 20. So is it the top path or the bottom path?
The top
Okay. So then what's the flow time of that process?
50.
So 10 plus 15 is 25, plus 10 is 35, plus 15 is 50. Okay, so everybody on board with that?
Right.
Okay, so then what is the effect of the flow time if 50% of the forms must repeat activity A, right? How would I adjust that? Emily, how would I adjust that? 50% of the forms have to repeat in activity A.
Well, I guess rework it.
Okay, so they'd have to come back through there. So how do I adjust the time? Scotty, do you know?
You multiply by the amount of visits or rework, whatever.
So rework is going to be if units have to go through multiple times. So that we're saying we have units that have to go through, so it would be 1.5, right? And so if I take 15 times 150%, basically, that's going to be 22.5 minutes, right? So that's kind of what was up when we first started to look at that. And so basically that increases the amount of time that it takes to do that by 7.5 minutes on the critical path, right? Because that's on the critical path, right?
Right.
On the other hand, let's say that 10% of the units had to be reworked here. Is that going to affect the flow time? Not if this is our critical path up here, right? Because as it increases the time of that activity, it doesn't increase it enough where it makes it on the critical path. On the other hand, if I set 50% of the units here, right, and we didn't have any rework here, let me just back this out. So if activity A takes 15 minutes, and I have 50% of the has to be reworked for activity C, is that going to change the critical path?
Yes.
Because that's going to make that 30 minutes, which is going to make it greater than that top. Okay? So it's just, again, this is not hard stuff. It's just kind of getting your head around how those things impact. If I said that an activity, like, let's say we have an inspection here, and I need to show it here so that the online's. Let's say that we have an inspection process here, okay, and it takes 10 minutes to do the inspection, but only 10% of the units go through that step. What would I say the flow time for that step would be? 1 minute, right? So that's what we would do. So visits are going to be less than 100%. Rework is going to be more than 100%. Okay? All right.
Was that rework is plus 100%?
What's that?
You said that rework was like a plus 100%, and then
Right.
Then
so
the other
because
one
if you think
was-
rework, you're saying things have to go back through the step again.
what was the other one called though?
Visits.
Visits.
Yeah, so visits are saying, like a quality inspection, not every unit has to go through that. Okay? All right. Problem 4.5 in our textbook is the Vancouver International Airport Authority, described in Chapter 3, manages and operates the Vancouver International Airport. Its focus is on safety, security, and customer service. And again, it says they're ranked in the top 10 airports of the world to maintain its excellent customer service standards and in anticipation of new government regulations. Airport management sought to take leadership in improving customer flow through its airport security checkpoints. To understand flow, management started with a single security line comprising an X-ray scanner for carry-on items and a screening station for passengers. Arriving customers first prepare themselves for the inspection by removing belts, coats, and shoes, emptying their pockets and separating electronic gear from other personal items. They then deposit all bags and trays on the scanner and proceed personally to the screening station. So here's our preparation, right? You're separating everything and putting it into the trays, okay? And then the person goes through the personal scanning side of it, right? And the luggage goes through the X-ray scanner, okay? On average, it takes passengers 30 seconds to prepare for the line and to place all carry-on items in the trays for the X-ray scanners. The X-ray scanner takes 40 seconds. Okay, so I've got my 40-second time. And the average passenger utilizes 1.5 trays. Okay, so we would think of that in the same way that we would think of almost like rework, right? It's not 1 for 1, it's not 1 passenger, but it's 1.5 trays for every passenger. Okay, and so we would take our 40 seconds and multiply it by the 1.5 to get the average flow time for that step of 60 seconds. The personal screening station requires 30 seconds per person. Finally, retrieving of belongings and getting reorganized takes 60 seconds, right? So we're out here. All the times mentioned represent activity time at the various activities and do not include the effects of waiting. Draw a process map. So here's the process map that we would have drawn. What is the theoretical flow time of the security check process? Okay, so the theoretical flow time, we are going to take the longest time, so 30 plus 60 plus 60 is 150 seconds, so that would be our critical path. Okay, a sample of 20 passengers was selected at random and the time required for each to clear the security check was recorded. The average of the individual times was 530 seconds. Okay, so now you know that's going to include their wait time, right? And so we're saying that the theoretical flow time is 150 seconds and the average time per person is 530 seconds. So we can calculate our flow time efficiency, which is going to be 150 divided by 530 or 28%. So they're spending, basically of that, they're spending 72% of their time waiting, right? That's as we look at that. All right. Then the last question says, what is the impact on theoretical flow time of the process if the personal screening activity is expedited to 20 seconds? Where did we end up? Hunter, are we to you maybe? So what if we change the personal scanner to 20 seconds? Does that change our critical path or the flow time?
No.
No, because it's not on the critical path, right?
No.
So, all right. So again, just to emphasize, as you're looking at your projects, you've got to look for the critical path to know where you're going to be able to make the impact. Zach?
What does that 28% efficiency mean? Like,
That means that, so when we read the problem, what it said is this is the activity time, and it does not include any of the waiting time. Okay? And so our 150 seconds is our theoretical flow time because it doesn't include any of the waiting time. Okay? And so the 28% then it says they took this average of 20 people from the time that they start the process till the time that they finish the process, which then includes the waiting time, and it took them 530 seconds. So we can find out that efficiency. So basically 28% of the time they actually have activity, and the rest of the time they're just waiting for something to happen.
Is that bad or good?
You'd have to benchmark compare it, but generally speaking, if somebody's standing around for 72% of the time, I'd say I'd be looking for the opportunity to how can we eliminate them from having to just wait for something to happen.
so you want like a higher efficiency, basically.
Yes, you do. Yeah, higher efficiency is better. Okay. So one of the things that could be happening, like if I think about an airport screening station, one of the things, if they're not busy and you have to walk all the way through everything and they don't adjust the lines, right, that's a complete waste of time, right? As they get busier, they need to extend the lines out. You know, that's a fact of life. But if you're walking in and it's not busy and you can walk straight up and go through, right, you're saving yourself some time there. Okay. And if they are busy and they have long lines, then what you're looking at is how can we make that X-ray scanner piece go faster, right? Because the X-ray piece or the retrieve and organize piece, how can we make that go faster for people? or the prepare and place on, right? Because these are the 3 steps that are on the critical path, okay? Because, again, decreasing the time at the personal scanner doesn't change the flow time of the process, all right? All right, so, and I've opted to kind of, and that's how you'll see us as we move forward. I'll try to take the problems from the back of the book and use them as examples, and then as you go to do your homework, you're going to see that they're going to tie in very similarly to what we've done here in class, okay? So, and again, what you'll find as we go through the semester is, as we get into the chapter 3, 5, and those chapters, lecture's going to be shorter, but then you're going to have the opportunity to talk amongst your group and figure out, okay, what steps should we be working on to make sure that we're on the right track for our project. So you have some classroom time to work on your project as well. I wanted to go ahead and just talk to you a little bit about the project here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and bring up Canvas. I spent some time this morning, since we've got our groups assigned, putting the assignments that are group oriented, beginning to add those to the assignment, so that should make it a little clearer for you. I go underneath assignments. Excuse me. Thank you.
Did you say after this week we're gonna like our like 10 to 12 hour homework stuff is gonna like slow a little bit down after this week?
When you
We
start
can do
working
this
with your
group
project,
stuff.
it balances out with your project, right?
Okay. I'm just
Yeah.
kind of wondering.
You're just kind of hoping, right?
I would really appreciate it. That'd be great.
Well, here's the scoop, all right? So you know you should be finishing up the goal, right? You're coming close to finishing that up. So that piece is going to be a check mark and done. And the class is structured. It's heavy in the front and gets lighter towards the end of the semester. So while you're not probably appreciating it now,
It's
I'm
like
guessing
shock therapy. It's like,
at the end of the well, at the end of the semester, I think.
welcome back to school.
So right now I've just got one category grouping called project assignments, right? And so you've got the process ID, you've got project management A and project part A. So Hunter and Kaylin and Courtney, I'm just going to pick on your group a little bit. If I were your group, I'm not really going to pick on it, I'm going to use you as an example.
That's fine.
If I were your group,
Pick on me.
right, there's certain components, and y'all might want to listen in terms of trying to understand how you might divide and conquer a little bit, okay? Because that's going to be your key in terms of how you're going to get through this, okay? And so project part A is the where you're actually starting to look at, okay, well, what do we need to do here, right? And so again, you have to identify the goal and your flow unit. What are your client's concerns? Identify the boundaries and begin your first map of the process, okay? Hunter, in my opinion, in your group, you're probably going to be the first person to do that, right? Because nobody else is really going to understand what you're trying to accomplish yet.
nobody
And that's
knows
going to
like
be
me.
your way to communicate to your group, this is what we're going to be working on,
Yeah.
okay? And then, on that same token, though, you're going to brainstorm with Kaylin and Courtney to get to be able to finish so you've got that, and then you've got project management part A, which is something that Kaylin and Courtney can work on in this first round, okay? With you, right? And so the three of you are going to need to get together and talk about the steps that are involved and what you're going to have to do, right? And then you're going to create your precedence diagram that says, here's the steps, right? And then you're going to...
Tonight?
What?
Just do tonight?
Let's see. Yes.
Oh, we're screwed.
No, you're not screwed. So here, let's talk this through. So here's the thing. Let's finish talking about it, and then I'll tell you how I want you to handle it. Because I want you to do it right rather than do it just to get it done.
Yeah, because there's no way I can get that done right. Like,
Okay. So, but you three are going to have time at the end of this discussion to get together and start talking through that. Okay? And as will the other two groups. Okay? So you've got the two sides of the project are. One of them is actually doing the project, and the other one is actually the project management associated with it. Right? And so You may, in the group that's working with the HR folks, right, you all may decide that you want to take turns on who's managing which side of it, who's working on the project management side of it, and who's actually working in there getting the details. But you should be able to balance out who's doing what. As an example, somebody who's going to have difficulty in getting to the location to meet, right, they might be the right person to handle the project management side of it. They can work and discuss, okay, here's what we're going to do, all right, and then I'll be responsible for submitting this part of the assignment. Do you see how you can kind of divide and conquer that? The HR folks, so this is what I wanted to talk to you about. You have not, did you email Susan again?
I emailed her back. She said she might be able to meet for a little bit this Wednesday,
Okay.
but we wouldn't be able to meet with the full group until the 14th.
And you're okay with that because
Okay.
because you just need to get that high level diagram,
Right.
and she ought to be able to provide you with a rough outline of what they're doing, right?
Okay.
So you should be able to meet with her and get through part A, right? And then we'll work on the deadlines with the rest of it.
Okay.
Okay? And so the other part that I'm going to tell you is somebody on your team needs to be responsible, and you need to decide how you're going to do this for communicating the deadline stuff to me. I can be flexible on the deadlines. I don't have an issue with that because I want you to do it and I want you to do it well, okay? But I don't want you to get 9 weeks behind, right? And then try to finish it later. But you have the responsibility to communicate with me and say, our team, this is what we're planning and this is when we're going to meet, and so based on that, this is, I think, when we're going to be able to submit that assignment. Okay? I don't have an issue with that kind of flexibility.
We're not screwed.
But what I do want is you have to be making forward progress, right? In this case, there's not a lot you can do because she's not able to meet. You can meet with her this week, but again, there's just not a lot you can do about that. So again, we have to have that flexibility because you're working with other folks, right? But you should be making every effort to meet those deadlines. And if you're not able to meet them, it's your responsibility to have someone on the team, whether that be the project management person, communicate with me, or whether that be someone that you've got as the lead on the project, communicate with me. But amongst your team, you decide who that's going to be. Okay? Does that make sense? And then you can consider me as an ad hoc team member. So if you, and I would like to go with you the first time that you meet with her to talk through and understand what she's saying. So include me on that meeting, right? I don't have to go to every meeting, but I'd like to be involved with that to understand. Hunter's part of it, I don't know that I have to be there. If you want me to be there, I will be. I'll be glad to talk to you.
Oh, can we just assign you stuff?
No, that's not how that will work, but I will help you figure things out, right? So, if there's some questions about what direction you would want to head with that, okay? But there should be, there's enough kind of to balance out with who's going to do the project management side of it. That might be somebody that isn't able to meet with the team to go over to HR regularly or isn't able to get over to the university bookstore regularly. You can kind of divide and conquer that work. You can take a look at it and decide, do you want to trade it off? Maybe you want, because we're going to do this project management piece for every section of the project, okay? And the project management piece is initially laying out what steps we think we need to be done, assigning who's going to do what, and then it's up to those people to keep track of the amount of time that they spend and communicate it back to the project management person. And then you're going to assess how close you were in terms of, and so there's like a 10-point assignment that says, and so that should be the same kind of person responsible for that for the group. Okay? Is that kind of making sense? Okay? So right now, I have all these things associated with a project, right? If you look, they're all underneath this header on the assignments tab. It's been working slow today, so sorry. This header on the assignments tab called project assignments. My question is, I could segregate that into those that are associated with the actual completion of the work on the project and those that are associated with the project management side of it. Do you want me to segregate that so that's just a little clearer for who's going to, so as you say in your group, Kaylin, you're going to be responsible, or Courtney, you're going to be responsible for the project management for part A, then I'm going to this section, and the project assignment is going to be more under the, the first one I think is going to be mostly Hunter that's putting that together. You'll be able to get help from other people as you go forward, but that first one's going to be primarily you. so that's my question. Do you want me to separate those so that makes it a little clearer, or are you guys clear on who's doing what?
I think we're clear.
You're clear?
Got it. Well, I mean, it's their label.
Yep. Okay. If you decide that you need some more clarity, don't be afraid to holler for that mask. That's what I've got for today. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on that, Scotty.
So for the project management A, only one person needs to turn it in?
Yes, that's right. So this morning, that's what I went through and did is I created groups for each of you, and then I started down this list, and I think I got down to here, and everything's input as a group, and I'll finish that out for the semester. So only one person will need to submit it, and then I'll grade it, and that will go for the entire group. Okay? All right, so what I'm going to do is leave you to kind of talk amongst yourself, figure out who's doing what, and then don't tell me. You communicate amongst yourself who's going to communicate with me about what deadlines you need moved, right? And then that person needs to email me those deadlines. Don't think just going, hey, Dr. Betts, we're going to need a little more time. That's not going to do it, okay? I need you to be clear and concise in your communication, all right? I did have for that group, just to kind of give an overview, Rachel, I'll hand it to you. That's the email that I got from them about what they were, the onboarding process. So I don't know that that's going to be incredibly helpful. I think you're going to have to meet with her on Wednesday and go from there. Okay? Any other questions? No? Yeah, so I need your attendance for today. I always want
all we gotta do is send us,
Oh, sorry.
okay, where to start with this?
Did you guys finish it?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we
On it.
So,
Here.
you read the thing about what they want us to do?
All
Did you
right.
guys not do applications for me?
Yeah.
I mean, they float on my desk and they get lost in the shuffle.
Do not be efficient with your paper. Just burn the trees, burn the trees out.
So are y'all still down for like meeting on Monday night?